Some are now criticizing those researchers for using stereotypes to study Asian Americans. Among those critics, Larry Shinagawa, an associate professor of American Studies at the University of Maryland. I asked him what he believes is the reality for Asian immigrants.
The great thing about this report is that it's emphasizing that there has been significant success among Asian Americans. That's the wonderful news. Asian Americans, many of them are highly educated, have good incomes, and they're definitely one of the largest, fastest growing populations. That's exactly what they mentioned. What they did not emphasize, however, was the flip side of the coin. And that flip side is that there are many people who are poor. There are many problems with looking at an average rather than the bimodal nature of all of the Asian community. In other words, what tends to happen among Asian Americans is that there are very highly educated and there are very many people who are not that educated. It's usually a bimodal distribution. Averages statistically are not a good measure for looking at the diversity and the conditions of Asian Americans.
Let's get into one of the things that you're talking about right now, which I guess if you really look at it is the poverty rate in the United States versus Asian Americans. They throw up the figures, Asian Americans doing much better than the U.S. population.
That's correct.
But then you dig into the numbers, which I did.
Yes.
You start to look at the Chinese Americans, the Vietnamese Americans, and the Korean Americans are actually doing worse.
That's right. And that's even of the population that they studied. What they failed to mention very clearly at all is that they're not studying Southeast Asian Americans, Laotian Americans, Hmong Americans, Mien Americans, Indonesians, or Thai, which are significant populations. But even among the populations that they do study, what you just mentioned is very true. So by using an aggregate figure of saying all Asian Americans overall are having low rates of poverty, belies the fact that specific communities have very different experiences.
And so take that one step further.
Yes.
If people are complaining, saying, geez, we're stuck here in poverty, what are you talking about? There's this report, you guys are doing great.
Right, and that perpetuates the mono-minority imagery. The more you say that a population is doing great, the first thing that's going to happen from a public policy perspective is say, what's your problem? Why do you need any kinds of services? Why does it look like you're doing so good and then you're asking us for specific needs? It becomes much more difficult for us to address some of the issues that are still facing Asian Americans throughout this country.
The benefit of a study like this, though, is it's a conversation starter. I mean, will you give it that?
I will give it that. I think it's a good start, but it would not be the end of a conversation. There needs to be greater dialogue. There needs to be more thorough work. There needs to be more nuanced research that makes the argument, let's say that Asian Americans are doing better, but at the same time there are significant issues that are facing them just like every population. I think that would be fair.
Larry Shinagawa, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us.
Thank you.